Welcome to the Warrior Mind podcast. This is where mental strength, emotional mastery, and human potential meet real life. I'm Greg Swanson, and each week we strip away the noise, sharpen the mind, and train the inner warrior required for modern life. Let's get into today's podcast. Why potential alone doesn't change your life. Hi, this is Greg Swanson. Welcome back to the Warrior Mind podcast. And we're going to be talking about potential energy. We all hear this person has so much potential and you have so much potential. But why potential alone doesn't change your life? You could have a lot of it. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more here today. So, many men, actually people, are carrying around more capacity than they are expressing. That is that potential, right? We talk about it. Oh, this person, especially in athletics, they have so much potential, but they're not expressing it. So there's the potential of it, and then there's the reality of it. And they know they're capable of more, whether they're an athlete, a business person, a salesperson, but somehow keeps pulling them back into the same familiar version of themselves. There's something there. It's this magnetic pull, if you will, or an anchor that holds people back. So there's the potential, and then there's the anchor, and the anchor keeps holding them back. And this is that identity gap. And for the past several podcasts and even blog posts and articles on LinkedIn, I've talked about this identity gap. It's who we think we are and who we really are expressing. And there's this gap there. It's kind of like emotions. When you have an expectation and reality, there's a gap. So let's just talk a little bit about what potential energy is, and not from a physics standpoint. So why potential alone does not change your life, right? It's stored capacity. And we can, equate it to physics if we want, but it's a stored capacity. This potential energy within you, it's there, it's stored. It's unused power. You go out and express part of yourself, but you hold back, and that's that unused power. And this creates that identity gap. It's the gap between who you can be and who you are. There's this gap, and who you can be is based on your potential energy, your identity of who you're holding yourself to be. And this is where potential must be converted. We must take that potential inside of you, inside of us, and convert it so we can shorten this identity gap. Right? Potential energy is stored energy, but a deeper lesson is that stored capacity means nothing until it becomes movement. You could have all the potential in the world, but if you don't start to express it, if you don't start to utilize it, it doesn't matter. You could have all of it right there, but if you're not going to use it, you might as well have none of it. So what is potential energy really teaching us, right? It's stored energy. So we know we have this capacity, the storage energy inside of us. All of us do. All of us have a potential inside that we haven't tapped into. And it's stored energy. And energy helps create movement. And movement helps create results. And results then reflect back on who we are. So if we think our identity is someone who's lazy, we're going to sit around with all this stored potential energy, and we're going to not tap into it. And so we're going to be lazy. We're not going to do anything, and it's going to support our identity. So we have to realize that there's more stored energy in us than we are tapping into. And it's the energy of position. So we can position ourselves to achieve great things, or position ourselves to stay where we are. And this is where this confluence of energy and identity and self-image come into play, right? If we think ourselves as one way and we act that way, but we're ignoring the potential energy. So we need to start to change that identity to something more powerful, which then will allow us to tap into our energy and position us as that greater version of ourselves. The capacity comes before movement, right? So we have to understand that we have this capacity, we have this energy, we have this, then we can move into it. We can use it for movement. We can use it for behavior, for taking action. But we need to first recognize that who we think we are right now is not who we have are capable of being. We have this capacity in us to do more, and we just need a coach like me or others to help us tap into that energy, that capacity, so that we can then start to step out of who we are right now and create a better, bigger version of ourselves. The power in you is waiting to be released. It is there. And I'm sure you have felt it. If you're listening to this podcast for any length of time, or even if this is your first time, you're listening to it because there's something inside of you that says you can do more. This is not the best you can do. This is not your best year. This is not your best month. This is not your best day. There is more best days inside of you. And it just has to shift that identity, which will allow you to tap into that potential energy. Potential energy is not movement. It's capacity waiting for conditions to change. So your potential energy is sitting there, but it's not going to become movement until that capacity is, it's kind of waiting for conditions to change, and you're part of those conditions. So when you change, then you can tap into that potential energy. Stored capacity inside a person. The strength is strength not expressed. So if you go to the gym, you can maybe perhaps deadlift 225, but you have the strength, but if you don't go to the gym, you can't express it. So we don't know how strong a person is mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually until it is expressed. And it doesn't get expressed correctly until we challenge ourselves. We challenge the identity that we're living under so that we can push ourselves to express that strength further. And it's clarity not yet acted on. So we have a vision of what we want, but we don't act on it. So this is what store capacity is, right? It's our strength that hasn't been expressed. It's our clarity that hasn't been acted on. It's discipline not yet aligned. So we have the strength in us. We have the clarity. We have the discipline, but we haven't tapped into that yet. And that's stored capacity. And it's purpose not embodied yet. So we have, the reason why we're here, and we have the strength, this clarity, we have all of that inside of us, but it's not yet been tapped into. And so that is that stored capacity. We have the stored capacity, but we need to tap into it. And that plays a big role in our identity. Men are not lacking ability. People are not lacking ability. They are carrying unused capacity that has not become action, identity, or lived power. So we have that. When we look at ourselves and look at others going, man, they just have so much potential. Yeah, they have so much strength. They have clarity. They have discipline. They have purpose, but they haven't expressed it yet. And that's what the potential is. And I want you to understand that you have tons of those potentials inside of you, but the way you are expressing it is dependent on the identity of who you think you are. So when we start changing the identity of who you think you are, you can then tap into your strength, your clarity, your discipline, your purpose, and start to express those more fully that align with the new identity of who you think you are. So this is where the identity is the gate. The identity is the doorway. The identity is the window to tap into that, right? Capability is present. Patterns remain loyal, right? So we have patterns and they're loyal. We live these patterns out all the time, and our capability is here. We're capable of it right now, but our patterns remain loyal, right? Old identity pulls us back. So we start to do something, and then the identity, we're not even aware of this, but the identity says, oh, you can't do it. You tried it before. You never succeed. Right? And this isn't just negative self-talk. It's describing who we think we are. Oh, I'm a person who can only make 100,000 a year. Oh, I'm a person that's meant to stay alone because I can't have a relationship. And so when we start to step out of that, we start to challenge ourselves. Those old patterns are loyal. They're true to us because, in a sense, they have worked up to this point. If you're alive, even if the pattern is not supportive of who you want to be, it's working because you're alive. So that old identity keeps pulling us back when we try to step away from it. And the change, whatever change we have, we can work on behavior. Oh, I'm going to start eating healthy. And you eat healthy for 2 days, and then the old identity creeps up and says, why are you doing this? You're never going to succeed. And then we backslide in having 2 pizzas a day, right? So the change feels temporary because we know inevitably we're going to fall back into our old patterns. So you do not constantly rise to what you're capable of. You return to who you believe yourself to be. So we are all capable of much more, but we don't rise to that level. Even if we have knowledge, I mean, this is the thing, you could read all the books on nutrition, all the books on working out, all the books on investing, but if you've at your identity as a person who doesn't succeed in those things, you have the knowledge, you have the potential, but you're not doing it because of the belief in yourself, your identity. So the difference between capacity and life, you sense more than there's there. You know more is possible, but old patterns remain. Again, this is really hitting hard in this because there are times in the past week, the past month, where you knew that what you're doing isn't working. You know you're capable of much more. And again, it doesn't have to be something fantastic. Just be capable of much more, like cleaning up the mess in the house. You're capable of doing it, but you don't do it because your identity says that you're a slob or some other thing like that, right? But so these old patterns remain, and we need to start working on the identity. If you're familiar with the podcast, I have a formula, TFAR. Thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions, to results. But those thoughts come from your identity. If your identity is a person who's lazy, then the thought is, I'm not going to clean up. The action is you don't do anything. The result is a messy house. That's just a simplistic expression of it. But these old patterns remain, and the gap becomes exhausting. We try to break out of it, we go back. We try to break out of it, but the old pattern brings us back. We try to break out, and after a while, we just go, this is too exhausting. I just might as well surrender to who I think I am. And this is frustrating of knowing you're capable of more while continuing to live beneath this. There's this gap, right? And this is not weakness, it's division. It's a division of expectations and reality. So the pattern is not random, right? These patterns happen all the time. The pattern is loyal, right? The pattern, we could say, is your old identity, right? It's loyal to you. It's loyal to old beliefs. It's loyal to familiar behavior. It's loyal to practiced identity. All these things, it's loyal to us, this pattern of who we think we are, right? The TFAR, thoughts, feelings, actions, results. All those are loyal to our pattern. These are not random things that happen. We do them over and over again. So we tend to repeat patterns even after they understand the strategy, even after you understand the strategy of how to break it. So the problem is not information. The problem is the identity running the system. Again, you could have all the information on how to work out, on how to lose weight, on how to cook, and you could have all this information, but if you don't do it, you wonder, why am I not doing it? Well, it's the identity, this deep identity that you have about yourself. And there are parts of our life where our identity is awesome, right? It kicks butt. But I'm just looking at, this section on a global basis, if you will, that the problem is identity running the system. So potential does not move itself, right? Potential sits there. You have potential in a battery. You have potential something. Something has to get involved with it. So it's like a loaded barbell, right? It's on the ground, but the stored force in it, in a sense, kinetic. But without lifting, there's no action, so that's stored potential. The capacity requires conversion. The barbell is a physical metaphor. The weight sitting on the floor represents potential strength. Nothing changes until the person engages and commits and moves and lifts it. So the potential is there, the potential strength is there, but you looking at it doesn't do anything. But you grabbing the barbell and lifting it, then it converts. Then that potential energy you had in yourself is expressed as strength. So the body really tells the truth, right? Fatigue exposes patterns. When we're tired, such as, well, let's say we're trying to do a good nutrition program. We're great. In the morning, things are great. We have a long day at work. We come home and go, oh, screw it. Let me just have pizza and French fries. Exposes the pattern, right? Fatigue exposes the pattern. We can use willpower just so much. And there's a great book on this of willpower, on how if we start making decisions so much throughout the day, by the end of the day, we're not going to have any willpower to adhere to our structure. But this is where the fatigue exposes those patterns of who we think we are. Heavyweight exposes honesty, right? So when we're lifting a heavy weight, whether it's an emotional weight, whether it's a physical weight, this expresses who we truly are. And the trail exposes quitting. The trial exposes quitting. Anytime we're put under duress, the real us shows up. We can say we're cool, calm, and collected. We can say we're eating healthy. We can say we're working out. We can say we're investing. We can say we're in a loving relationship. We can say all those things. But when our feet are to the fire, that's when our identity truly shows up. So you look back in those times and you wonder, what the heck happened? Well, it's part of our identity that's happening. When we get into these arguments, when we get into this trial by fire, is when we really show up. And pressure exposes identity. And this is great whether you're looking at making sales or athletics or anything. It exposes who we are. There are some people who they get into these pressure cooker situations and you go, wow, how did they stay so calm and collective? That's their identity. They don't have to work for it. It comes naturally. And it didn't come, it comes naturally now, but it didn't come naturally. We have to work at how we change the identity. Because it took, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, it took that long to create this identity. So you can't expect it to happen in one podcast or one book. You need to have a coach to work with you, like myself, to expose the identity, expose it for what it is, and expose it for the benefits you're deriving it, right? We wouldn't have the identity that we have if there wasn't a payoff for us at some level. So we need to look at what that payoff is and how to get that payoff in a different way so we can change the identity. A physical challenge reveals what thinking can hide, right? The training exposes avoidance, control, discipline, quality, identity limitations. So this is why I love physical training so much, because it really brings to the surface who a person is. And knowing is not becoming, right? Insight is not action. You have all the education in the world, but you're not taking action on it. So what good is it? It's just entertainment. A strategy is not embodiment, right? We can sit down and have a strategy on how we're going to lose this weight or how we're going to make this much money. But if you don't do it, you're not embodying it, right? And intention is not identity. Oh, I intend to wake up early tomorrow to go to the gym. I intend to save 10% of my money. I intend to ask this person out. But it's not your identity, so you're not going to do it. And practice creates proof. You practice under pressure, and proof will be exposed as to who your identity is. This is not meaning you're a bad person, a good person. It's just your identity on how you're living. So reading the book, hearing the podcast, knowing the answers do not close the gap. Awareness has to become repeated aligned behavior based on the identity you want to become. From stored capacity to lived power. Stage 1, recognition. Recognize what's going on. 2, you have to make a decision of who you want to be, who the identity is. Then you start taking action, and then you practice and document, and then that practice turns into an identity. So potential becomes real when awareness becomes action, action becomes practice, and practice becomes identity. And then you document all of these things every day so you support the shift you're creating in your identity. But recognizing what you're doing isn't working in an area of your life. Make a decision that you want to change. What actions would you need to take? Then you practice those actions, then you document and confirm those are different actions, and you confirm that your identity is starting to change. If we don't confirm that our identity is starting to change, we're just going to fall back. That identity, the old identity, is going to pull us. So we need to really recognize that we're changing our identity by documentation, by journaling, or even with coaching. Can your identity carry your potential? It's not what am I capable of, it's who am I practicing to be? What identity is leading? What must change now? These are the questions that you want to ask, not what am I capable of? So potential asks what is possible. Identity determines what becomes real. So potential, I can do this. It's possible, but is it probable? Right? Anything is possible, but probably you won't do it unless the identity shifts. And so this is where a real important distinction: possibility over probability. probability is equal to your identity. So when your identity determines what you want to become real, your possibilities will become probabilities. So let's close that gap, right? Through physical strength, through mental clarity, through emotional resilience, meaningful purpose. Potential is stored capacity, and all these and more. But a person's life changes only when that capacity becomes aligned with action. So you need to take action. What type of person would eat healthy every day? What type of person? And then start to embody that. And this is not fake it till you make it, because you're faking it at some point. You're not acknowledging the change. So we need to acknowledge that change. And download the Resilient Man framework. So I put together a workbook for you. You can download it in the link below and learn how to align identity, discipline, and action so change becomes sustainable. Want to see the show notes on this podcast? You can visit warriormindcoach.com. While you're there, you can find more useful information and request your power strategy call, complimentary. Since you'll be on the internet, follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, all under Warrior Mind Coach. Thanks for spending this time with me on the Warrior Mind podcast. Remember, your mind is not neutral. If you don't train it intentionally, it'll be shaped by the world around you. Until next time, stay strong, stay aware.